Hi, I'm Steve Hood from McNamara. Recently in the news, we heard about yet another cyber attack, which utilized a piece of software called Kaseya. If you're in the industry, you definitely would have heard about this one, but it's fair to say it didn't really get as much mainstream attention as some of the other attacks that we've had recently, like Furniture Village, for example. If you're in business and you did happen to hear about it, you probably thought, Kaseya, I've never heard of it. And I know that we don't use it, so it probably doesn't affect me. Well, you wouldn't be alone in that thought. However, the implications of this particular attack and the way it was carried out might have far wider consequences. And it certainly piqued the interest of the managed support and security provider community and IT support companies. The outcomes from this might very well influence how these companies support your business moving forward. Here at McNamara, we've been anticipating this type of attack for quite some time. So I thought it would be quite useful to get Ciaran and Geoff together on this video to discuss the attack, why we believe there are other implications, and what we're thinking about how we might possibly avoid this type of thing in the future. So, Ciaran, Geoff, thanks for coming on the call. Perhaps we should start with a couple of introductions. So why don't we take a minute or so just to quickly explain your respective roles at McNamara?
Right.
Geoff or Ciaran, whichever wants to go first.
Go ahead,
I'll
Geoff.
go first. So I'm Geoff. I'm the managing director. I've been working here for about 13 years now. Um, my background was originally not in IT. So I had to learn everything as I was going along. But over the years, working with Ciaran, I've developed pretty in-depth uh, experience and approach to managing the clients from a customer service point of view, but also from a very technical point of view. And over the last few years in particular, we've really been focusing on the service delivery in terms of security, as opposed to just the old break fix model.
Yeah,
And this incident, which we're going to discuss, is really it's really hit the heart of everything that we do and everything that the way that we've done it up to now. So this is it's a really interesting, if slightly scary time for the MSP provider world, if you like.
great. Thanks, Ciaran.
Hi, so I'm Ciaran. I set up the company back in 2003 and was the MD for the first half of our life, or a bit more than half, before Geoff took over. Over the last 10 years, my focus has been on information security. So, as it became apparent to us that our role in relation to our clients was changing, that there was an emerging reliance on us for security, I
Yeah,
took some time out first from the business and got thoroughly trained up in security, and then took that back into the business. And we've been focusing more and more on security as the key issue in information management, really.
yeah,
And as just echo what Geoff says, I mean, we've been concerned about this kind of attack. It's felt to me anyway as if it was just a matter of time. And sure enough, it's happened. And I agree with Geoff. It has really quite profound implications for our industry.
okay, great. Thanks, guys. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is I've just got a couple of sort of prompt questions just to kind of get the discussion off. So for those not in the know, it's probably a good idea to explain firstly who are Kaseya
Yeah,
and what do they do,
yeah.
and then secondly a sort of description of exactly what the attack was
Okay.
and how it was carried out.
Okay. Want me to run with that, Geoff, or
Oh, I'll kick off. But so Kaseya are um, one of several, but there aren't that many providers of managed software that MSPs use to control, manage, monitor all the devices under their control. So that's servers, that's laptops, it could be other network devices, routers, switches, printers.
Yeah.
And it's a central, it's one console. They call, in the industry, it's kind of known as a single pane of glass, where you can basically see all of your clients, all the companies. You can monitor their offices, internet connections. You can control the servers, um, give support to your customers, and you can do it really, really quickly. It's very, very efficient. If you need to remote control a computer, click of a button, bang, you're there straight away. They're not the only one, but like I say, they're one of the biggest. Other notable ones are SolarWinds, ConnectWise. There are other slightly smaller ones like Ninja RMM, a few things like that.
Hmm.
But they all essentially do the same thing. They have different feature sets, but they're all based on the same thing, which is a little piece of software, which is usually called an agent, which sits on every computer and monitors what goes on that computer. Whether it's the services, it could be monitoring disk space, um, internet connection speeds, whatever.
Mm.
But it's also used as a tool to do things on that computer. So you can install software, you can restart services, you can run disk cleanups and things like that. So it's a tool
Right.
for really doing the day-to-day background maintenance of all the machines,
Okay.
with a view to keeping them running. And there's a kind of a mantra within the MSP community that we'll fix problems before you know they've happened.
Right.
That's kind of key. And it could be as simple as, if you're monitoring an internet connection, if that you see the internet connection go down, you call the client and you tell them before they've even realised, and they think, "Wow, that's amazing! You guys are great. This is like magic." Um, but that agent is, I'll let Ciaran discuss more about the specifics of it. But it's that agent that was essentially compromised in the attack, because that agent runs with very, very high administrative privileges on all the machines that it's
Mm.
running on.
I was just going to say, this sounds like a pretty powerful piece of
It's
software.
extremely powerful, and it has far higher rights over the machines than the people using them.
Right.
It's very, very common practice to limit the administrator rights of the people using those machines. But this agent has full, absolute, unfettered access to everything on all of those systems. That's how it works. That's billed as the selling point. It's like this thing can do anything you want, and it can do it en masse. It can do it across every machine in your supported uh, environment. It could be hundreds and hundreds of servers, of PCs, laptops. It can also log into your routers. It can manage your switches and your printers. It says, because it calls commands to other things on the network as well.
Yeah.
Um, the other important point about Kaseya is that it's because this software is not the only thing that Kaseya and other companies like them do. They also it's very, very common that they would buy up other ancillary services that MSPs use, like documentation tools, like ticketing systems, which are separate from the control systems, but they all heavily, heavily integrated, so that they're logging what they do. That you raise tickets against the machines, you can do anything you want. But
Mm.
fundamentally, they're all integrated, and often integrated with their competitors' products as well. So you might have a remote control system from Kaseya, but you might have a ticketing system through ConnectWise, and a documentation system like, for example, IT Glue are one of the industry leaders in that, and they're owned by Kaseya. And so when the attack happened, you saw lots of these other providers suddenly cut off the integrations
Mhm.
to the other Kaseya products that they're using. So you might not have been using Kaseya as the remote control software, but you may have been using Kaseya for your documentation or for your ticketing systems, but using something else for your control. And those links were severed as well. So there was a ripple effect throughout the whole industry, not just people using the Kaseya service that was hacked.
Right.
Using anything that was owned by Kaseya, suddenly the integrations were cut off. And some of them, I think, are still cut off some 2 weeks later. It's been a really, really integrated, in-depth attack, and some of the repercussions of it were felt far beyond just the affected systems and the clients.
Okay. Great. Anything to add, Ciaran?
Well, no, that's actually that's a great description of this little demon that's out there. What I could do is run through the attack itself, like
Yeah.
what happened here. So, as an MSP, when you buy software or buy the right to use software like Kaseya, often there are two possible flavors. One is where you would run your own server and install this software on it. And that server might be in your office or in a data center. So that's one flavor. You have your own server running the software, and the other, like everything else, software as a service,
Yeah.
like any cloud service. So you have a subscription to use an instance of this software managed for you by the provider.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, a flaw was discovered in the version that runs on the on-premises server, the MSP managed server. And it appears to be the case that this flaw has been semi-public knowledge since April of this year. And bear in mind that these servers, just as Geoff was explaining, have to communicate with the agent on the PC. So they must be accessible from the internet in some way. So the flaw that was discovered allowed access to the server. As I say, it appears to be the case that the flaw has been known about since April, and it's certainly the case that Kaseya were working on fixing this flaw. But what happened 2 Fridays ago, just before the July 4th long weekend in the United States, so perfectly timed that maybe MSPs were easing up for the holiday and people might have had Friday afternoon off and so on. So they exploited the flaw to gain access to these servers. We don't know how many, but a relatively small number. So they've now gained access to a system that controls this powerful agent on the computers owned by the clients of those MSPs.
Yeah.
Okay. And with that, with control of the server, they're now able to issue instructions to those agents to go ahead and let's get this ransomware attack underway.
Yeah.
And encrypt everything on the computers and on the servers that those computers were attached to, and then demand a ransom.
Yeah.
Now, what's particularly it's horrendous. The very mechanism that customers are relying on for IT service to be provided, and many customers equate IT service with security. I think they're wrong in that, but it's a common thought. So the very service they're relying on is the very service that's being used to attack them and extract money from them. Like in the early days of this, when we still knew what the numbers were, the average ransom demand was running at $45,000, which, a small business at a stretch probably could pay, but it would hurt bad, and so they have control over a robot, if you like, on the computer that has far more rights than anyone who uses that computer, and they then use the most sophisticated imaginable methodology to encrypt and to issue the ransom demand and so forth. It was. I mean, were it not for the motivation, I admire the sophistication and technical skill that went into this. Very
That's, that's the thing. These people always seem to be a few steps ahead of
quite.
of security vendors and that type of thing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Incredible. Okay, well, that was a great kind of overview of what it was. So this might seem like an obvious question, but why has this particular attack got MSPs and IT support companies so concerned, do you think?
I think, well, I think there's two answers to that. One of the answers is that possibly a lot of them are not as concerned as they should be, or they're concerned about the wrong thing.
Right.
So if I was a Kaseya customer during uh, this period, my main concern would have been I can't support my customers anymore because you've turned it all off.
Mm,
This is one of the first things Kaseya did. They turned off their own systems that they were running, which we understand weren't compromised. But then they told all the clients who were running their own hosted servers to turn them off because they didn't know what was happening, and then turn them off was the only way. But unfortunately, that was too late.
yeah.
Because I think it was a bit of a cascade. So some of the clients, not everything was encrypted that I understand. Some of the clients, and some clients they had almost everything, or if not everything, was encrypted. So I think one of their main concerns would have been that the affected people were obviously must have been terrified of their own liability within this. Were their clients going to come back to them? You've encrypted all of our data now. You owe us £45,000 to get it back, or something like that. Um, some of them, I'm sure, would have been thinking, well, I wish we had a backup, because that's a very good way of recovering files that have been encrypted. You go back to the version before they were encrypted, but
Yeah.
backup is not as ubiquitous as some of us would like to believe. Obviously, also backup is sometimes in the hands of the client themselves and whether they want to pay for it.
Yeah.
Um, but the other side of the worry is where we're coming from. Is what does this mean? A lot of MSPs would have been, I'm sure, relieved that it didn't affect them because they didn't use Kaseya.
Mm,
But something that's really apparent to us, and as we said at the start, has been for a very long time, is that it's only a matter of time before it is us,
mm,
because the software that we use is it is almost certainly on the hit list. We've had SolarWinds, we've had Kaseya. There are maybe up to 20 or so providers around the world. Most of them are based in the US, but there are some others. It's only a matter of time before someone finds a vulnerability in those as well, because the fundamental way in is the same for all of them. As Ciaran said, these control servers, by their nature, have to be open to the internet in order for the agents that they're controlling to communicate with them. So there is a doorway in. Vulnerable. Every time you get an update on your computer, it's very few of them are feature updates. Very few of them actually give you something new. Most of them are fixing something that is broken in the back end, and it's sometimes the things that are being fixed are found by Microsoft or whoever it may be, and they go, "Oh, that's a flaw. We need to fix that." But sometimes the flaws are fixed after one of these rogue actors has found and exploited it.
yeah.
It's very, very common. We've seen it with the SSL vulnerabilities of a couple of years ago. I think Heartbleed, it was called, where they affected web servers, compromised security certificates. Some of these things that for decades have been the cornerstone of security on the internet.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's all for nothing. One tiny little bracket in the code is found, and you can put anything you want into that and make it run whatever you want. It's just a matter of time before all these services are inevitably compromised, because the only thing you can really do to keep it really secure is to cripple everything that it does. If you cut off access to the internet, you cut off access to the agents as well. So, like I say, the thing there's probably different levels of concern around the industry. One of them, the MSPs, will be worried about their ability to deliver their service. Some of them will be worried about the fact that their service has been compromised, and others will be thinking, well, when's it going to happen to us? But I suspect a lot of the feeling is relief in the MSP community that it didn't happen to them,
Mm.
and they may be worried about, what if, but whether they're doing anything about it. I suspect that many of them feel quite powerless to do it, because if you're managing 800 machines, you have fairly limited options available to you. You can't set up individual connections to those PCs, because again, you've opened your own vulnerability. Remote desktop. You could remote desktop into all of your machines, but you're exposing remote desktop to the internet, and that's
Yeah.
a serious flaw as well. So there has to be a concern. What do we do next? How do we get over this? How can we continue to run as an industry if we can't remote control all of the devices under our management?
Yeah. Yeah. Ciaran, anything to add to that, or?
Well, I completely agree. I would just add that, in the forums that MSPs hang out in, the wrong conversation is really flourishing right now, which is, who do we switch to instead of Kaseya? It's completely the wrong conversation. Exactly as Geoff has said, the they're all the same.
Yeah.
The model is the same in every case. Of course, the software and the security and the flaws are different in each case, but really it's the wrong conversation now.
Yeah.
Who do we switch to? And I think I'll just pick up on one little thing you said there, Geoff. I'm not sure that it's really about remote control. It's what you mentioned at the start. It's that mantra of our industry, which, if you pick it apart a little bit, is a fairly silly mantra, that we fix problems before you know about them. In other words, we're acknowledging that the problems are going on all the time, but we fix them before you know about them. It's a bit, why not just not have them? And I think it's like this model using the agents is really focused on that part,
Yeah.
whereas many MSPs actually are focused on remote control, but selling it on, we fix problems before they affect you.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. I think it's fair to say, you made a point there, Ciaran. It's all of these other vendors. So lots of MSPs will be thinking, "Oh, bloody hell, who can we switch to
Yeah,
to get away from Kaseya?"
yeah,
Without, you know, I'm sure they probably do realize this, but all of those other vendors, to some degree, will have flaws in their software.
yeah.
Uh,
And sorry to interrupt you, Steve, but also it's a big job to switch vendors as well. You're looking at a year to
yeah,
do it. It's not a trivial thing.
yeah,
Yeah, it's also
not-
expensive as well.
yeah. I was just going to say,
You might have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds tied up in your contract and in everything that the time you've set it up. These things are very, very powerful out of the box,
mm,
but the functionality that they give you out of the box is, I mean, yeah, we spent hundreds and hundreds of hours configuring, kind of bespoke stuff for your clients. If you support a client for 10 years, you really get to know them. They
yeah,
have their own particular software, they have their own particular services that they use, which you may have configured for monitoring, which it's impossible to have that out of the box. And so it's a daunting prospect. And your tech team, if you were going to switch to another thing, as Ciaran says, you're looking at a year from, you start to think about it, you shop around, you look at what your current one is doing, and then you've got to figure out a whole new interface, a whole new set of background scripting and things like that you need to put in. The way that it monitors is different. I've looked at half a dozen over the years of these different things, and while they'll fundamentally do the same thing, the way they do it and the way they're configured to do it is very, very different. So there's a very, very steep learning curve in some cases, and you've really got to have a tech team that's really dedicated to doing it, and that those tech team would also be obviously supporting the clients as well. So you're taking time away from the day-to-day stuff that's kind of making you making the MSP money. This is what your clients are paying you for, and putting them into something else. And if you're doing it like this on a kind of emergency basis, there's there are lots and lots of things to consider. It's a very, very difficult step to take.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, what are some of the preventative measures we can take against this sort of thing? It sounds like to me that we've kind of already said that this software is a pretty all-encompassing, all-powerful
It's the
piece of
all-seeing
software.
eye.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, is there anything you can preventative wise
Well,
that you can kind of do?
so we're taking the view that the the correct preventative measure is to stop using this sort of software. Now that's that's a huge
Mm.
conceptual thing to say. The Like, if you think of our industry, so we're well, we've got we'll fix problems before you know about them. That's our big selling point.
Yeah.
Uh, but really, in my experience, you talk to clients like, okay, we accept that you fix problems before we know about them, but given that we don't know about them, we don't care either. Yeah? That doesn't interest us. But what really interests us is if something's wrong, you guys can jump on and fix it straight away. That's what we really care about.
Yeah.
And that's what we've built the industry on, really. Look, Mr. Customer, you don't really have to worry about that stuff. We all accept that it is going to go wrong, but we'll fix it when it does, and you can rely on us to do that instantly, really. And we're really, to the extent, MSPs compete with each other in terms of we respond in 6 minutes. Okay, I can come up with a USP to beat that. We're going to respond in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's essentially it. Now, I think we just got to get real now and say that really, from the customer's point of view, is the difference between 5 and 6 minutes, is that really what matters here? Is there a way we can do this safely? Now, there are ways. I'm not going to go into enormous detail here, but
Yeah.
we need to sacrifice those two concepts, and we need to do this in cooperation with the customers. We need to have the honest conversation. Look, let's drop the nonsense about we fix problems before you know about them, and let's think about sort of configuration templates that avoid problems. And now we accept that problems are going to crop up now and again, but let's get our focus onto this idea of templating the correct way of setting things up for you. And issues are going to come down to accidents. They are still going to exist. And there will be times, let's say a really common one, I can't print.
Mm.
Now, is it business critical that even you're preparing a proposal, you've got the meeting in 15 minutes, you let's say you're presenting the proposal on paper, and you've got to print it. Yeah. Now, so there, we're in business critical situation here. Really? Are we? Like, say the meeting was postponed for 15 minutes because you couldn't print, or you say you used your iPad to present the proposal. The definition of business critical. And we collude in this because that's exactly a sales pitch. I'd be there, talking to the marketing director, the finance director, and say, now you've got a client meeting coming up in 10 minutes time and the printer's not working. Who are you going to call?
Yeah.
We're there. We're here to help. It's nonsense. I mean, both parties are colluding in a kind of silly fantasy.
Yeah.
But if it was just a silly fantasy, that would be okay. But it's a silly fantasy that's introducing this level of risk that we've been talking about. And like you say, what are the protective measures? It's not really that you take what you've got and apply corrective measures to it.
Right.
We've just got to rethink this. Now, we have been rethinking this for quite a while. Like at the start of the pandemic, we thought we're moving into a situation here where maybe home working is going to become permanent. So we've got an issue because we can't treat PCs in a person's home the same way that we treat PCs in an office. In other words, our concept of control can't apply in that environment. So we've already been thinking, how do we move away from control and towards something much more like compliance?
Right.
Like, have you got the right kit? Is everything set up in the right way for you to do this in a secure way? And so we're already heading in that direction, but this has completely solidified our view that we've just got to get out of it. And what are we doing right now? We're client by client, we're removing the software. That's it. We can't wipe out the whole lot in one go.
Yeah.
What we can do is we can bit by bit cripple its functionality, which we are doing, and client by client get it out of it. Get it off the system. And in order to do that, we have to have the conversation with the client where we say, let's drop the fantasy now. And this is now, you could have, last weekend, somebody could have been demanding $45,000 off you. Let's be honest, because of what we're doing. So we have to get out of this altogether.
So I think what you're saying there, really, the crux of it is being able to have honest conversations with your customers, and basically telling them the way it is, and co-developing some kind of alternative solution with them to get them in that right place.
Yeah.
Where both parties are happy.
Yeah, and it's a kind of an honest, grown-up conversation, because this idea of conflating IT support and security and say, okay, well, we just won't talk about it, and the client, okay, I know we've never talked about it, but I'm just going to assume the IT guys have it covered. That was kind of all right for a while, but now, if the IT guys are actually the channel, that's introducing the risk, that can't be left unspoken anymore. We have to talk about it.
Great. I can see some interesting conversations coming up as a result of this. Yeah,
we're already having them, and they're not. It's not it's not easy to broach. Though
no.
I must say, we're not finding real pushback from clients. I think clients are not happy to address.
Not at all. No, what I meant was conversations amongst the industry about the actual way in which things are done moving forward. I totally agree with you. The conversations with the clients or the customers, whilst they're not easy conversations, they'll appreciate it. The fact that you're actually just being honest.
I hope.
Well, it does, Ciaran. You guys know my beliefs on this. Being completely open and honest with your customers it just builds even more and more trust. The trust you further. Okay, so do you think the other, and I'm sure the answer to this is probably yes, but do you think the other RMM vendors, we mentioned a couple of them, SolarWinds, ConnectWise, those guys, Are they worried about this, do you think?
They are worried about it, but they're also, if you think about it, so we've just been talking about our relationship with our clients and the conversation we have with our clients.
Mm.
We're also a client of our supplier, and
Yes.
um, I've like I say, I've investigated half a dozen at least of these over the years, and recently I've asked. Well, I was talking to a guy from Solar Winds who was trying to sell me Solar Winds a while back. It was a different component of the one that was that suffered their own attack.
Mm.
But he followed up with me sometime later, and I said, well, given what's just happened, no, I'm definitely not gonna gonna take your product. He said, oh no, don't worry, it's a different product. Ours is safe.
Yeah.
Um, I've spoken to over the last couple of years, I've spoken to someone from Kaseya, and I asked her some fairly probing questions about what their response was for their clients, and as an account manager, sorry to say, she was fairly unaware of the implications for her company, for her clients. It was a separate. It wasn't the service that they provide. It's one of their other services that we have something from. And I've spoken to one of our uh, the support desk and account manager for our own software. I got a From the support desk. I got a link to a web page that they'd with a pre-prepared answer, and from my account manager, I haven't had a response. Um, I um, I think that they're clearly worried, but I think this is what we've been saying. There's an inherent complacency in the industry
Mm.
because everyone believes that they are as secure as they can be. If you look at some of the responses from the Kaseya, the CEO, from the uh, CIO, I think as well, um, there was not. It was very defensive on their part. They uh, the response is, well, this was a 0 day, no one knew about it, to be fair, and we fixed it. It's only taken us 5 days or 7 days or whatever it was. Um and it was about, it's the kind of standard approach of saying, well, it's unfortunate, isn't it, happened, but look how well we dealt with it after it happened.
Mm.
And I think the rest of the industry is, it's the model is flawed, as Ciaran said. It's not about you. There's only so far you can go to make things secure. Now it's security, like encryption, public-private keys, AES, whatever. The encryption is secure, but what we're talking about is not encryption. What we're talking about are the back doors into these systems
Mm.
that have to be there for those systems to work. And the industry cannot do very much about it because they rely on these inherent insecurities. And also their software relies, as we come to say again, that very, very high level of administrative control over the devices that they're managing.
Yeah.
If you took that away, the software wouldn't work because you can't run these background maintenance or fix these problems as they occur without that high level of
Before they
administrative.
occur, sure.
Yeah, well, sorry, before they occur. You can't fix things before they occur unless you've got a very, very high level of administrative rights. It's very, very important. So yeah, the industry is clearly worried, but I think their heads are buried in the sand. They're focused on trying to be ahead of the attackers, as you said.
Mm.
If it wasn't for the malicious intent, there's some very impressive coding and scripting and research that went into this attack and all the others. Some vulnerabilities are very easy to spot and exploit. Some are very, very difficult and hard to exploit. But exploit it they did, and something everyone can relate to. Is kind of a similar analogy. Is email.
Mm.
Whether you use Microsoft or Google or something else. these email providers have very, very sophisticated spam and junk mail filters. But you show me someone who doesn't get a phishing
Yeah.
email every day. We use Office 365. We've got additional licensing. We've got other security checks in place. I get phishing emails sometimes. Often they go to junk, but we have clients who regularly trawl through their junk mail looking for things that are in there, and then if they forward it to us and say, "I got this, should I be worried?" And it's a badly written extortion email saying, I've you, you've been looking at porn on your computer. I'm going to tell all your friends, send me a Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't matter. The level of security you put in place could be really, really exceptionally high, and things will still get through because it's an arms race.
Mm.
Um, while vulnerabilities exist, there will be people out there looking for them and looking for ways to exploit them.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can really get around that is to stop using the things that have those vulnerabilities in them.
I've got a supplementary question actually, on this. Do you think that, well, quite often what we hear in our world is that a lot of these smaller businesses are reluctant to talk about security because quite often they don't understand it, but that again, that's our fault probably. But secondly, they often think, there's only five of us.
Mm,
We're not. They're not going to. They're not. These guys aren't going to target us. They'll target Kaseya, or
yeah.
Furniture Village, or whoever it may be. Yeah, they're not going to target us. So, but I think one of the things that this has highlighted for me is that maybe people will realise that these companies, MSPs, who are providing services to companies who have 5, 10, you know, 2, 1
Yeah.
employee sometimes, it's this realization that, well, actually, the way that they're gonna get to us is through attacking
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's exactly
MSPs.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
it's the we of course, like all MSPs, we have very small clients. We have clients of one, two, three people. We have clients of dozens and dozens of people. Um, the yes, historically it's been a difficult conversation. We're only 5 people. We're only a small company. Why would anyone target us? Um, well, that may have been true 10 years ago, but then that phishing is sent to thousands and
yeah,
thousands and thousands of people, and then those accounts get hacked, and they send thousands and thousands more. So you're spreading a very wide net. The thing that those clients have to understand, and that MSPs need to really cop onto, is that if they're the target, then if someone wants to target us, they target all of our clients at the same time. And
yeah,
as Kieran was saying, it's this software pushed out the ransomware to all of the endpoints that server was managing, and that could be thousands and thousands. It depends. Some of these MSPs are big.
mm,
It could be tens of thousands of endpoints. But more than that, it's not this attack didn't go after an MSP that was using Kaseya. They went after Kaseya. So you've got all of the MSPs and all of those MSPs clients.
yeah,
So it's if someone wanted to target one of our clients and came to us and did it through the software that we use, that's also not what happened. They went one step up the chain,
yeah,
and it cascaded down through all of their servers to all of those MSPs, and then out to all of their clients in turn. Which is one of the reasons why it's really hard, I think, to put a finger on or put a number on how many people are actually affected,
Yeah.
because the numbers, I think, were talking about the number of servers, the number of MSPs that were affected. There's no
yeah,
data about how many clients those MSPs had and how many people or endpoints those clients had. So it could be tens of thousands of affected people,
mm,
and then of course hundreds of thousands of individual files for those clients, and then those clients in turn, the people who were affected, the people whose files were ransomware, um, were themselves unable to carry out their business because all their files were locked. So
mm,
they could the MSPs are in trouble because they might be put out of business because of the attack. Kaseya certainly won't be. Um, they should be. the MSPs might be put out of business, but their clients might be put out of business. And again, it's those 5 user clients. If you got a company of 200 people, might be, better placed financially to perhaps pay the ransom, but also just to, recover from a week of disruption. A client of 2, 3, micro business,
Mm.
they might be out of action for weeks. Um,
Yeah.
if you're supporting, we know from the pandemic, restaurants and pubs, they operate on fairly small margins. If a pub is unable to open for a bank holiday weekend, that could be a huge percentage of their revenue from the year. And the pandemic has, seen the closure of many, many restaurants and businesses that rely on this, a constant trade. Um, we have in the past supported hospitality services. We know this, and if they, as a result, were unable to carry out their business, they might go under as well. So this is really, really far-reaching.
Yeah.
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 I think that like the question about small businesses, very small businesses who take the view that we'd never be a target.
Yeah.
I think this attack, just as Geoff was saying, illustrates something that's often hard to explain, which is the concept of a supply chain and the position you occupy on a supply chain. People often think they're at the end of the supply chain, that supplies come to them, but of course they're supplying people. And I remember a conversation with Geoff can probably work out who this is, a 4-user estate agent in North London, and with exactly that comment. But we would never be a target, and perhaps, but you're an estate agent in a fairly posh part of town. I wonder about all of the people you sell and rent to, and whether they might be of interest to anybody. And then you think of us, think of the estate agent online software you use and who their suppliers are. And the supply chain is not a chain; it's a web, and you're just somewhere on that web, and you can often just be collateral damage on, as the attackers pass by on their way to a bigger fish,
Yeah. So
and
it's, al-
sorry,
it's almost like being clipped in a drive-by shooting.
well,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it may not be so worthwhile to target one 5-user estate agent, but if you've got a company that's managing 55-user estate agents,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's very, very attractive.
Yeah.
Because a 5-user estate agent could be managing a lot of properties for a lot of landlords and a lot of tenants. You just say it's just
And remember,
multiplier.
they're just after money,
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
small estate agents. There can be a lot of money passing
Mm.
their way.
Yeah. Incredible. Well, guys, I think we probably should wrap up there. It's been really enlightening conversation, and I think there's definitely more to be said about this. And probably I think people will be interested to hear more about particularly what we may be doing as a company moving forward. I'm sure there's more to come on that, and in fact, I know there is. But it's certainly a really, really interesting topic. Not just more so from the point of view about how we're going to respond, rather than the fact that it was another cyber attack that happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because let's face it, these things happen pretty much on a daily basis,
Yeah.
and it's no surprise anymore. I don't think in the industry no surprise in the kind of wider viewpoint of we know what goes on in our industry, but in the
Yeah.
wide viewpoint of everybody.
And in fact, because I've been talking to clients about this attack, and I start the conversation with, did you hear about this?
Yeah.
And universally, well, I heard about lots of cyber attacks. Which one?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think as I was saying, I think the interesting thing that's going to come out of this is how the industry changes and evolves and responds to it, rather than the fact of you know, it's another cyber attack. I'm sure Kaseya will come out of it. As you said, Geoff, you know, they probably aren't at risk of going out of business. But you know, it'll be interesting to see what they do as well, of course. But yeah, thanks very much for joining the call. If you've got any comments, we'd love to hear about them. Just drop them in the comment sections when you know, this video will be getting posted on LinkedIn and YouTube, etc., etc. So you know, and as I said, there's more to be said about this, so there'll probably be more videos, certainly from us, on this in the future. So thanks very much for watching, and thanks again, guys, for taking part.
And thanks for organising it, Steve.
No problem. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.